Salvete. In today's video, I'd like to talk a bit about the human design perspective and actually much expand upon it because, see, the English language is beautiful because it's collective and everyone can learn from it, but it kind of lacks the specifics, and this kind of has confused me, for example, in terms of experimenting, living out my own design, trying to see whether if it actually fits or not. The thing about what I wanted to talk about is the personality notes and the design notes, because in human design there's this beautiful thing called storyline. You go from the south node, then into the north node, which begins at around 42 years old, 38, when you go to your Uranus opposition. And then you breathe out what you've learned in the south node. Now, one has to actually go a bit beforehand, before the whole system actually came into play, and think about the gates. They are derived from the Chinese I Ching. And to a normal person, that will be all fine and dandy in terms of, this is just a knowledge that has been taken from and then incorporated into the design. However, what most people fail to recognize is how different the Western mind operates from the Eastern mind in terms of the timing. Now, let me introduce you to the concept of the time itself. In Western train of thought, we think, okay, there is the past, present, and future. What happens now is already past, and the future is something that will happen in a bit. In Eastern psychology, time is a constant loop. It loops in and back on itself. There is this whole historical concept that I won't really get into, but if you think about it, the Chinese have had so many empires, so many kingdoms, they all fought within each other, and it just looped back. And this developed in the I Ching itself. That time is not non-linear. It is constantly rehearsing what already happened before. Think of it this way. You have 12 zodiac signs. The Chinese zodiacs, right? Every couple of years, they repeat. So, for example, 2026, it's the year of the fire horse, right? And then back in 2000 and whatever, there was another horse. It just repeats. There is this overarching narrative of things repeating. And when we look at the gates in human design, we think, okay, this is the gate, this is the only way that it is going to happen, and if it happens, it's already done. Whereas if you take the thematic in I Ching, each line tells you a story. Within a gate, that is the narrative. Now, let's further clarify that so it'll be easier for you to follow and understand. When you look at my design, you can immediately see that the south nodes are both in the 26th gate, however, in different lines. This immediately conjuncts them in a sense that I am able to see my environment, so what is happening to me. And what is the 26th gate in of itself? So what is the thematic about it? Well, it basically boils down to the controlled power. The hexagon 26 is about controlled power, or in human design, it's about the ego, the power of the ego to do or not do, or actually to modify the memory. It means in the I Ching, it talks about the taming power of the great. So perseverance furthers, it is about like gathering the power in order to act. And when you look at the fourth line, it talks about a young bull with pieces of wood over his horns. This is about preemptive measures. And what is the perspective in this case? So the first line. Well, the first line talks about basically it tells you to stop your advance in itching. In human design, it talks about a bird in a hand, so what you already have, right? Therefore, even though my environment is about gathering great power and not acting because the bull may or may not hurt itself, I consciously only have access towards the first line, which talks about it seeing what it already has and preventing wrongdoing, preventing or stopping or not doing anything. So for example, so even though the situation in of itself would be, for example, me needing to change something, to sell something, or talk about something, my mind would see it as, okay, this is what we have is not enough, or no, this isn't going where it should go. It's not that something happens and then it just goes back. It's which theme, which cycle are you in? Yes, this is the word I've been thinking about, the cycle. Because it cycles. When you think about the environment where your body is placed, it's this feeling of, oh no, not this again, right? It's like, why does this thing, this thematic, keep on happening to me? Well, because this is your environment actually. It loops back on itself, it rearranges, it shifts people, shifts places, but you are still faced with it because there's something for you to learn over there. This is what we don't really recognize. In Western mind, we think, okay, there is this now and there is this past. In Chinese, it's repeating. You're repeating the thematics of your environment. So, because you are surrendered, there is a certain reaction, like the end goal. You start with the south node, the lesson, and it goes into the north node, which is the lesson, so that it can later begin a new cycle. And this cycle can be 1 day, 1 hour, 1 moment, 5 years. And you can have multiple cycles going all over at once. For example, you can be I don't know, in the environment of the 31st gate. So you know the voice that says I lead. So for example, you can be within your family and you can say, oh, you know what, guys, we should do this in order to get that. But for example, you're also working at the same time, right? And you're a team leader. It's at the same time. You're within your family, within the same day, two things happen. It's an overarching narrative that you have to learn from. Now, finally, where does the perspective come in? Because the design north node and the south node are the unconscious. You can't really see it unless your perspective, unless you're surrendered and your perspective works. Now, the immediate thing that you have to think about is, what's the thematic of the gate and in the design node, and what is the thematic in the perspective, like the personal perspective? For example, if you have an abstract like environment, if you have a logical perspective, they don't really operate well, because your mind consciously needs to look at the thematic of logic, whereas your body needs to finish and, you know, go through a cycle to later metabolize what it already, you know, survived. They crash immediately. It's like, there's so much to this. Again, but let's get back on track. When you switch over to your personality perspectives, what they call you, how you see, there is a lot of that's been left out. And actually I wanted to come up with a kind of a different I guess words for it, because it will help you to understand. Now let's stay with me. You have a thing called prism, right? The prism reflects light, and if you switch it around, it produces different colors. It basically takes a stream of light and it just projects different types of colors, right? When you look at the human design on the, you know, personality side. There is the notes, and then there is perspective. The difference is that the notes are the thematic that you're looking at, and the perspective, it's the prism through which everything operates. Let's take, for example, my design, because it will be easier to understand if we follow through. When you look at it, well, it's easier for me to see my environment because I have everything in the same gate. However, the prism, remember, so that the bottom arrow, I operate through tone 3, which is visual. So again, the streaming of information is being processed visually, intuitively, through the mind, and I see it through the 5th color. The prism, so the fraction of light that I'm seeing is probability, right? So the nodes denote the thematic, and the perspective, it's the prism. It's the specificity of the way you see. Because, for example, if I had a 6th tone instead of the 3rd tone, I would not interpret everything through the realm of visual stimuli, but through the realm of emotional stimuli. It would be, I wouldn't be asking, okay, I have seen this before, but I would be thinking, I have felt that before. Not only that, if the color would change, so for example, if I didn't have the probability, and I would have, well, let's say, the 1st color, I would not be thinking about, okay, this might and might not happen, and I have seen that before. I would be, seeing the thematic in terms of, I felt that before, and I don't feel like this is safe, right? Because the 1st color is about survival. See how different it is? Because I've been confusing perspective so much. I've been confused by it because it tells you one thing and then the substructure tells you another. Well, if you change the wording, it's better to understand. The perspective, the motifs are the nodes, and the prism through which you view those motifs are the variables. This is how it's easier to understand, instead of like trying, I mean, at least for me, it's like I've been trying to understand it for so long, and this kind of helps me to be more clear, instead of like, am I supposed to be seeing correctly, or am I even seeing correctly? Well, I am seeing correctly if I am surrendered, and through this surrender I see a good thematic through the correct prism, through the prism of intuitive and visual probability. Yeah, that's it. I guess the wording is kind of, hard, but that's the thing about the knowledge. You need to relearn, you need to check, and you need to verify by yourself. This is my verification. That doesn't mean it's correct, but for me it works so much more when the wording is different. It's not confusing. That's about it. Thank you for watching.